There's a better way, sometimes anyway. Most specifically when we have a big spike at the front, a big attack transient like this. And so in this situation, there's a better alternative to compression, or I suppose it is technically compressing. And so slow down multiplier, rewind, Let's say we want to compress this drum here. We want to bring up that tail, that tone. Let's say we want to bring it up 10 dB to make the tail look more like this. This is compression, changing the dynamic of the drum. Now to do this, we could use a compressor, a very particular kind of compressor called a limiter, because they turn it up 10 dB into the limiter, effectively bringing up that tail 10 dB. The limiter limits things at 0, so if we turn it up 10 dB, the spike at the front, the attack transient gets held at 0, but the tail comes up 10 dB. That's why it turns this into this. Theoretically anyway, transparently, that's the idea of a limiter. That's probably the first idea you had. However, there's a better way. When we have a big spike at the front, sometimes there's a better way to do this. We can still achieve that same 10 dB tail increase, but with more punch if we use a distortion device. As you can see on screen now, we're turning it up 10 dB, we're increasing the gain 10 dB, but instead of limiting that front bit, we're distorting it. The drive there is the turning it up, so we're turning it up by the same amount, 10 dB, but because we're distorting, that attack transient is different. As you can see on screen now, I'll include some various arrows and words and stuff. Notice the difference between a limited attack and a distorted attack here. Visually, it's different. And now listen audibly. See how the distorted kick has more punch in that attack bit, that front bit of the drum? So you can think of distortion as a different kind of limiting, a different kind of compression. It's still compression, but it's doing something else at the same time. Remember, limiting is just a very specific setting for a compressor. Limiting is compression, and distortion, at least modes like this, effectively limits the sound. Flattening out the sound, just like a limiter, as you can see, comparing the limited version to the distorted version. But importantly, with the distorted version, when everything goes above 0, the shape changes when we hear these extra harmonics, the distortion sounds. With limiting, when we turn it up and it hits 0, it gets held at 0, hopefully anyway, transparently. But with distortion, as we turn it up, it gets distorted, everything above 0. So in this case, the tail's not distorted as it stays below 0, but the attack transient does get distorted and provides that extra punch we were looking for. Great for this drum, if we wanted more punch. Sometimes we don't want more punch, so it's not like we should always do this. But it's an option, but it's an option anyway, an alternative to compression. Remember, think of compression as just changing the volume over time, changing the height, the amplitude of the waveform, or I suppose, changing the visual shape of the waveform. That's compression. And so yes, while we could do this with a compressor, we could also do this with other devices, such as distortion devices. Not all distortion modes will achieve this result, but certainly the normal ones, your analog clipping modes, enabled in any way. The analog clipping mode, for example, does this. Oh, turn on soft clip as well. That's also a good idea. However, some of the more, I suppose, interesting or creative distortion modes or wave shaping modes, they don't do this at all. Take this as an extreme example, this crazy wave shaping shape in Trash 2. That won't do this. Keep it simple here with things like tube distortion, analog distortion, soft clipping, stuff like that. This is too crazy, I won't dive into it now, but that's, if you have crazy wave shapes like that or crazy distortion modes like this, that'll do other things too. That would completely change the harmonic character, the tone of the thing. So for this video, ignore those ones. Keep it simple with analog clipping and soft clipping. But in this case anyway, for the things I've described relating to drums and that attack transient, as explained in this video. To understand why, what wave shaping is, this guy here, and how that relates to distortion, and all that sort of fun stuff, do see my course on Groove 3, all about distortion, where I explain from beginning to end, including all first principles and things, how distortion works. Distortion wave shaping, the beginner ideas, through to the more intermediate and advanced ideas relating to distortion. Anyway, the point of this video, it was supposed to be a short one, but it's kind of run on a bit, but that's okay. What was the point? Oh yes, as an alternative to compression, especially when looking at drums, don't forget about distortion. And most importantly, when looking at drums like this, so where they have a big attack transient, a big attack transient, a big spike at the front, as that's what tends to benefit most from distortion, giving you that extra punch. A distortion, just like a limiter, can change the shape, the dynamic of a waveform, flattening it out in a way you might typically do with compression. Knowledge into the brains of you from me via the medium of microphone, camera, YouTube, internet, and so on. Oh, wait, my website, or subscribe. I sell various things on the website, as you can see, and or subscribe, etc. Catch you guys on the flippity flip.